With all the Superman adaptations in the recent years, My Adventures with Superman is easily the best one. Even though they changed his origin in a way, he still had all the traits Superman should have and felt like Superman and Clark Kent, rather than some god that was sent to Metropolis. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down My Adventures with Superman and why he's one of the best adaptations of Superman we've ever gotten, at least in recent years. So first of all, Clark Kent is still that awkward farm boy. He's still learning how to be. He hasn't really learned how to use his powers to really save anyone just yet. He's just getting to Metropolis and he just wants a normal life. That's all he wants. He doesn't want to be different, but he is. He hides his true self in order to put on that persona, and I think the awkwardness when he meets Lois is just fantastic, showing that he's just some lovable farm boy from Smallville. And I really love it because they really focus on both Lois and Clark this season and how they grew to love each other. Personally, they kind of moved a little bit fast for me, where there's definitely time jumps between episodes, but it did really encompass who they are and what they mean to each other, showing Clark's true spirit and how he wants to help everyone around him, how he's just a good person looking out for the little guy. He continued to show compassion to his enemies, showing that he doesn't even want to fight them, he just wants to save people. And one of the things I really noticed with the DCEU when it was going on was the fact that they kind of pushed that to the side. They made him look more like a god, which I was never a huge fan of. I like having this idea of this person who's completely different. He does have godlike power, but he just wants to be like everyone else. He just wants to help people, and he doesn't want to do all this fighting. He just wants to make sure everyone's safe and happy. And the DCEU also made him feel like a god among humans, rather than just someone trying to be like everyone else. Which in this, it reversed that. He never wanted to be a god, he just wanted to be like everyone else, live his life, and go on being normal. I did see a lot of people complaining though about how he was bad at hiding his identity, and that's the thing. The show made it more realistic. He'd been hiding his identity for so long that when he finally went out and about in the world, he kind of stumbled over himself as he tried to learn how to do it while also protecting people around him. Like for example, with the 300-pound dumbbell, he was just so focused on Lois, he didn't even notice it was 300 pounds because it just felt like nothing to him, and he quickly threw it because all he was trying to do was impress Lois, and that's just the main thing. He was so focused on another task, he didn't realize that this 300-pound dumbbell normal people wouldn't be able to lift. He lifted with no problem and just threw it, which I really like. It's showing that he's more comfortable around the people he cares about. Even though he was trying to hide it, he still slipped up here and there. And the show also had a lot of scenes during it that just showed us what Superman really is. For example, in episode 6, when he saves Lois from all the bullets, Lois says,
"How did you know you'd be bulletproof?"
I didn't. I just knew that you weren't.
Which was a top tier moment, showing that even though he didn't know he wasn't bulletproof, he was ready to risk his life to save Lois, which he would realistically do that for anyone in order to save someone else's life. And I love how in the same episode they also showed that Clark was so scared about sharing his identity to Lois and Jimmy because all he wanted to was to be normal and to not be treated differently, but his friends just wanted him to be open with them, which I think that really shows a lot. I've said it a couple times now, all he wanted to do was to be normal. He doesn't want to be seen as different, which is why Superman is such a great character. He doesn't see himself above everyone else. He sees himself as an equal. Even though he might be stronger and have these extraordinary abilities, he's still just a normal person at heart. And then in episode 8, we have him saving the Mist from being hit by a truck. He saw the villain about to get really hurt, and he put himself in the way. He did make a mistake and hurt other people, but he was thinking about saving someone's life, showing that he wasn't about to let them just die right there, especially if he could do something about it. Episode 9 had Flip talking about how when she thinks about Superman and how he's helped people, it doesn't make her feel so small anymore, which means Superman is giving the people of Metropolis hope, which is what he's supposed to do. We also in the same episode had Superman not wanting to fight Ivo. All he ever wanted to do was help people, which then came back around and had Lois and Jimmy using Flamebird to get Metropolis to help Superman, trying to dull their fear of this person with extraordinary powers that could hurt them, showing that he uses his powers for good, and also pointing out that even though he could hurt people with his powers, humans also hurt people because of fear and hatred, which kind of shows us what the government does when they're scared of Superman. They potentially hurt people trying to stop him because they're scared of his power, and even pointing out that Superman made his choice. He could have been a bad guy, but he wasn't. He chose to save people, showing that it's time for Metropolis to stand up to help him. him, which is just a great thing with both Superman and his city, is that the city is willing to help their hero when it's his time of need by turning off all the power and draining Ivo of his power. And then of course in episode 10, Superman was willing to sacrifice himself to save Lois and his friends to blow up the ship so that the invasion would stop. Again, just another Superman move, sacrificing his life to save others, which he'd rather do that than watch anyone he loves die, which just shows how good of a hero he is. Now, even though this was a great depiction of Superman, they also changed a lot from the comics with the villains, which I think was really interesting because it did add to the story. Some of these characters are a little bit bigger than others, and I think they might eventually get their superpowers if this show continues to go on, but it was interesting to see how they used the Kryptonian Brainiac tech instead of just giving them their normal metahuman powers, which we had Livewire actually get powers in this, but she did start off using the tech. There was Heatwave, who actually does have like a flamethrower in the comics, but in this it was a Kryptonian like suit that shot the flames rather than just a blaster, which I think was interesting. And Heatwave is just Heatwave, and I'm surprised that they showed up in something like this. Now, Roughhouse in the comics is a clone of one of Boss Moxie's henchmen from the original Intergang with super strength, but in this he got tech to make him super strong, which in this he wasn't a clone, so they changed up this character, which I don't think a lot of people actually knew about, so I don't think it's a huge deal there. Deathstroke got himself some armor, which was kind of like his icon type armor from the comics, which does make sense, and he's also just not the assassin we know from the comics yet. He's still working for the government, and I feel like they're probably setting him up eventually to become that super soldier, and he might just not be there yet. Ivo Parasite was completely different from the comics because Ivo in the comics isn't Parasite, and he creates Amazo, which can copy Justice League member powers and use it against them, which was interesting because putting Ivo with Parasite was just a huge change, but the Parasite he had was pretty freaking cool, especially when it turned into a kaiju. And the comics, Parasite's been multiple people, but the more well-known one is Rudy Jones, which I do wonder if we'll meet him eventually and he'll become the proper Parasite. Then we had the Mist, who used the tech to go invisible, which in the comics, the original Mist did have powers. He was a chemically altered human capable of altering his physical density and being able to turn into a gaseous form. And then you got Silver Banshee, which in the comics, Silver Banshee's power comes from a Banshee curse that her family has. So her using the tech to do the sonic screams was really interesting, and I'm curious to see if that curse will eventually show up. Honestly, if this show continues to keep going, there's a lot of chances these characters could return with their proper comic book powers and also introduce new characters who have metahuman powers rather than just using tech. But with the tech, it also set up Brainiac showing up because the Kryptonian tech had the Brainiac symbol on it. And in the comics, Brainiac has been an experiment of Krypton, so the new take on the show looks more to be going that route, with him possibly dominating Krypton and taking over General Zod, because in the Justice League animated cartoon, Brainiac and Lex Luthor merged to become one being for a bit. So this could be a reference to that and a way for Zod and Brainiac to both come in season 2. And with that, it also looks like they changed the reason he came to Earth, because it looks like Jor-El shot him through that portal when Zod and Brainiac were going to invade Earth, possibly to be the savior to stop them one day so he could become strong on that planet with the yellow sun and avenge his planet. His powers also seem a little bit different too from the regular comics with how they visualize it with the blue, which could just be them animating it differently to look cool like an anime, because they did have a lot of anime references like Sailor Moon, which I think was a lot of fun. Overall though, I truly believe this is one of the best adaptations of Superman in recent years, and I really like what they did with the series. It has a lot of heart, it's wholesome, it has a lot of fun moments, and I think this is just a great animated series to watch for Superman. Honestly, any kind of adaptation with animation when it comes to comic book characters is usually a lot of fun, because you can do a lot more crazy, weird stuff than you could doing live action. And I also think the show just did a really good job showing us Clark Kent being Superman and also becoming the symbol of hope for Metropolis. It's also just a lot of fun to watch him learn how to use his powers while he's in his younger years, especially because in this series we watch him unlock his X-ray vision and his super hearing, as well as his heat vision. But I can never forget that we also do have Superman and Lois currently going on, which I do think is also a great adaptation of Superman, but in his older years, because he has a family, he has his kids. Again, they definitely changed stuff from the comics because he has 2 sons, where Jordan's the one with powers instead of Jonathan. However, in that, they show a great family dynamic, showing him try to be a father as well as a superhero. I really liked Henry Cavill, but I just don't think the movies did him justice for his Superman. And then all the debacle happened, and now he's no longer Superman, which honestly really sucks, because he fit the part. But let me know in the most recent years, what were your favorite adaptations of Superman? What are your favorite Superman projects or comics? And what do you want to see from the character going forward with My Adventures with Superman and the new DCEU? I hope you enjoyed this video about My Adventures with Superman. If you liked it, hit the like button and the subscribe button to stay up to date with all my DC and Marvel content. And with that, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.